All right, good morning, everybody. Kevin here. It's another Wednesday, so that means another Water Cooler Wednesday episode for you. Joined as always by Dwayne Gibbs. Dwayne,
Good morning.
how's it going?
Good.
Keeping
Getting
busy?
definitely getting hot up here in North Carolina for sure.
Oh
Summer
yeah.
is here. It's hot, muggy. Feels like I'm back in Southwest Florida.
Very good. Let's see. So I've got some things to talk about today, and it really stems from a core concept here. I've It's been interesting a couple of weeks here. I've had some people reach out just out of nowhere, just getting emails from people. Hey, I joined this other outfit a year or so ago, another outfit being another training company, a year or so ago, and then I heard about you, and I, even though I paid a lot for the program, I'm not getting the help, and I don't know, So I started having these conversations with people, and I'm really amazed by the lack of training that people had. And I started thinking about that. I'm going, what's worse than not being trained? It's probably being trained the wrong way,
Yeah.
or not even the wrong way, but not
Yeah.
what am I looking for? Not thoroughly trained or missing parts, or not trained enough, I guess, in a way. And it's scary because they go out there armed with partial knowledge of stuff and they leave huge gaps in what can happen. And it just blows me away. And again, it's like, well, was that something that they just didn't learn? Was that something that wasn't provided and all that sort of stuff? People can talk about the differences on that, but the point is, man, there are certain things that that I've said over the years that I repeat. I don't know how many times you've heard me say certain phrases, but I always tell people I do that for a reason because I want to drill it in their head where it's
Yeah.
muscle memory, where they don't even think about it,
No
because
question.
you can get, some of these small that look like smaller things can turn out and completely flip your deal upside down.
Yeah. With being in the space, I'd agree with that statement. And there are, depending on the individual that's taken the training, sometimes we've run across people that feel like they know it all,
Yeah.
and they just, that they don't hear what's being said, and they think they automatically know the answer
Mhm.
or what they should do. So it's not. I don't think it's everybody's fault that's in the training business, but I believe that there are a lot that don't fully train their people correctly. I don't
Yeah.
think there's a complete layout and a system and a structured way of how to train somebody. And I think that's a big problem. What
Yeah.
I like about your system, and hands down, there's nobody else that does one-on-one. I mean, you have people that do training, and you may talk to somebody, but you're probably talking to somebody that does not have the experience, or when you bought into that training program, you're dealing with that individual. Everybody comes through your program. It is dealing with you directly one on one. And I know you have a systematic way of what that first call looks like, all the way up to, bi-weekly, nightly calls, and every you tell exactly, it's kind of like you are the GPS of the training business in how you train someone. You
Mhm.
tell them where to go, what they need to do. Granted, they're going to do the work, but you're going to minimize the risk, but maximize the reward in someone's not only learning, but their investing style and buying notes.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, I think you're right. The one-on-one definitely covers because each note can have its own little nuances. And that's what I mean. It's almost impossible to identify all of those unless you're specifically working on something. But I just hear it enough, where it just, I sit there and go, I don't, it's really almost in a way a disservice when somebody goes out there kind of half armed on some stuff. Um, Based upon that thought, I wanted to cover something because this is one of the topics that came up that they were unfamiliar with, the people that I was speaking with in a training. For me, it's so basic and fundamental that I was really kind of blown away that this part of the industry wasn't really hit hard by this person's experience. I'll just put it that way. And it's a fundamental thing that comes down to really some of the core concepts of the business. And I start my whole training core programs talking about what is a deed, what is a lien, what are lien priorities, what power do liens have on that, how are they recorded, what does it look like, how are properties owned, what type of estates are there in ownership, and what does that mean, what kind of security instruments are there, what does that mean? And for me, that's like if you're learning to play football, let's start with, well, this is a football, this is what we're doing. Start with the
Block
core
and
stuff
tackle.
because everything comes down. Yeah, from football. And baseball would be the same thing. It's like you've got to learn the fundamentals because the fundamentals are the foundation for everything, and they will pop up on every deal that you do. And the note in business, in my opinion, is the same way. You've got to understand the underlying documentation within this because at the end of the day, it will show up on every single deal, performing, non-performing, semi-performing. It doesn't matter. The fundamentals have to be taught and understood the right way. And that's why my whole training course starts with just that. And I'm telling you, if you go through the first two videos that I have of my training program on the fundamentals, you will know more about real estate than most real estate agents. I promise you that. It's I'm not picking on real estate agents either, by the way. I have a real estate license. I have very good friends that own real estate franchises. They're agents, so I'm not picking on that at all. I'm just saying that the fundamental core parts of the business, if you learn those, everybody, and make it on your agenda, put it on your agenda to learn the fundamentals of the business, it will serve you extremely well in the future because they will come up on every deal. So what I wanted to talk about today then was one of those core things, which is property taxes. Property taxes in every state in the United States, you got property taxes that you have to pay. We'll see what happens in Florida. Some people apparently aren't going to have to pay property taxes, which I think is a good thing. And property taxes, I can make a strong argument on property taxes and are they fair? Are they not fair? I mean, at the end of the day, we like to think in the United States that we own our property. Really stop paying your property taxes. See how long you own that property. You might pay off the bank, own it free and clear, but if you don't pay the government, they will take that property away from you. Why? As a result of property taxes. So it is a very, very important thing to consider here when you're looking at notes. So every note you look at, performing, non-performing, semi-performing, doesn't matter. You need to look at the property tax. It's one of the top priorities of things that you look at, everybody, because in every state in the United States, property taxes are given priority. Okay. So how do we identify what those are? And by the way, everybody, I should have said this at the top. You might see Dwayne have to drop off today a little bit early. So if you see him pop away, he needs to attend with something. But here's just a screenshot, and I've obviously blackened out some sensitive information here because, again, my point is not to point out particular companies or anything like that, or buyers and sellers. So I specifically left up here on this one in doing my property research. So when I find a note deal, I run the numbers. Do the numbers make sense? If the answer is yes, then I start doing my next level due diligence. And that brings me to public records. And one of the first things I'll look at is, are the property taxes paid? Very simple. So in this deal that I was just looking at yesterday and continuing to work on today, because I'll still probably buy this note, by the way, so I'll just let you know that from the get-go, but it's still under the due diligence process here. So I can see when this party acquired the property, they did that through the quitclaim deed back in 2020. But then I've got all these 2022, 23, 24, 25, and it goes on, by the way. There's another one for 2025 as well. And just a simple search showed me that, whoa, what's going on here? So on public records in most counties in the United States today, you can get to this information. You click on it and open it up. And I'll show you again, blacking out some of the information here. I will show you what they typically look like. They don't all call them ferifacius, which is an old Latin thing for you caused this. Basically, it's like this is your fault, not our sort of thing. So it sounds better in Latin, right?
Yeah.
Versus, hey,
Not
you
not
this
admitting
this is
not
this is on
admitting to
you,
guilt. Yeah.
you caused this, not us.
Yeah.
But that's really what it means. And what they're doing is here, if you don't pay the property taxes, the county will put a lien on your property. Okay, there's no question about it. Why do counties do this? Well, first of all, what does this money pay for? Okay, where does your property taxes go? It goes to school, it goes to road improvement, it goes to county improvements, it goes to all sorts of stuff. So the county comes up with a budget every year, and they need a certain amount of money based upon their citizenship.
Hmm.
And they come up with this budget and they count on people paying their property taxes on time. But what if you have hundreds or hundreds of thousands of people who don't? I mean, I'm here in Orange County, Florida, and Orange County, Florida has to print them in a newspaper every year. I'm sure they did them in South West Florida as well. It's one of the requirements. And it's like a whole section of a newspaper. I mean, it's hundreds of thousands of people haven't paid to the tunes of tens of millions of dollars. So what's the county supposed to do? Well, they're either in a huge budget deficit, so now lay off fire department, lay off police department, emergency medical, or leave the potholes where they are, no teachers, that sort of stuff, or they got to come up with the money somehow. So that's why these liens are given such a high priority where the county can step in, and in DeKalb County very quickly. DeKalb County is one of the few counties in the country that I'm aware of that has tax lien sales on a monthly basis every month. Most have once a year, sometimes twice a year. This county does them every single month. So they go after this very, very quickly to do what? To take this money that's owed, in this case, $4,694, and get that right away. They can only do that if they file a lien on the property of the delinquent taxpayer. Okay. So when you're doing your public records research, you've got to look at property taxes first, right? Look at that, make a note of it, see what it is. Okay. Then you can look at the recorded documents, quitclaim deeds and all that sort of stuff, but you've got to identify this because this is a big potential problem. So, like all problems, there's solutions. So on this one, what do I do? Well, I found this and I said, whoa, I went to the seller. I said, hey, I noticed, by the way, that, there's delinquent property taxes. In fact, there's been a pattern of delinquent property taxes. Now, I purposely showed you this going back to 2022, 23, 24, 25, and now I'm focusing on this year 2025 one. But I wanted to show because that's an established pattern. And the immediate concerns is, have these been paid? And what was strange in this county, they don't have satisfactions on this same page. You've got to go to a whole different website to find if these have been paid off, which I forgot to take a screenshot of for you. But I went to that website and saw that all of these indeed had been paid off. Okay, so the county fires off this letter. We're putting a lien on your property. You got X number of days to pay it. And they ended up coming up with the money. But why the pattern? Why do you have to wait, for the county to threaten a lien before you pay the property taxes? When I'm looking at buying this note, I'm looking at patterns from the borrower. Who's this person that's going to become my borrower? Okay, why are they doing this? Right? Is this a problem that's on an ongoing basis? Looks like it. So for me, that's discount off the note. Okay, it's a problem. I'll identify it. Now, in all fairness, they have cured everyone along the way. This one has not been cured yet. And it's a significant amount of money there. And it's growing in penalties and interest every single month. So we identify the problem, and then we have to come up with the solution. And then we negotiate accordingly. That's that's really what it comes down to. So as I saw this, and I'm working with the seller, all the other paperwork is good. I can see all the transactions, I can see all the assignments, all the allonges, all that's good. The numbers look pretty good. Boom. this is a problem, and I'm still waiting on the payment history. Okay, so two pretty significant things that I need to look at here. So when it comes to these items, property taxes are superior liens in every state. Okay, what does that mean? They're given super lien status, and super lien status means a couple of things. First of all, they're top priority liens. They jump ahead of other liens. Most liens in the United States still fall under the old English code of first in time, first in right, meaning the first to record is in this position, next to records in that position, etc., etc. This is done by statute, meaning this is done by law. So the law says in these counties, these liens can jump to the front of the line. Okay, so that puts them above your first mortgage. If you bought the first note on this property, they're above you. Okay. Okay. How does that impact you? Well, it's going to impact you based on the second thing, which is they're also given the power to foreclose. And that's significant because if you're not paying attention, if you don't cure this problem, the county's going to go ahead and foreclose on that property. You might be wiped out completely, in part. You've got to pay attention to it. It's that important. Now, where it gets not tricky, but where it gets a little challenging for you, but thankfully for the all the technology that we have in AI, you're not expected to understand every county and every state and how they handle these things. So you jump on to AI or Google search, whatever you're doing, and you look up how is this handled in this particular county, in this particular state? How much time do I have? What's the priority? Because this problem has to be cured before it goes to a tax deed sale. It might start as a lien, but it could progress into a deed sale. When you see deed sale, deeds title to the property, that means the property itself is going to be foreclosed upon and sold at an auction, not for non-performant mortgage, because they might be paying their mortgage, but for non-performing, not paying your property taxes. So it is a foreclosable thing, and you've got to pay attention so you're not wiped out. It's that much of a priority, everybody. So that's just get in the habit when you're looking at deals. What about the property taxes? Should be one of the first things that you're thinking of. So, how do we cure these? Well, first thing that can happen is, which I really didn't put on the list here. Yeah, I'll cover it in this. First thing is that the borrower pays. All right. So I'm in the process of possibly buying this note. So logically, what that means is I'm not going to go to the borrower. The borrower doesn't know me. I don't have any rights on this note. I don't own this note yet. Who does? The person selling it to me. So I'm going to go to the note seller and say, hey, man, there's still 4,900 bucks here. This person has a pattern of doing this. Can you reach out to them and see if we can get that paid off before I buy the note? That would be the best case scenario. Okay. And by the way, in this particular case, they own several acres, but it's divided into two parcels, one parcel with acreage in the house and the parcel behind just the acreage. Check both, everybody. Check both. Two parcel IDs, both of them delinquent taxes. The land's got liens from 2024 and 2025. So the further these liens go back, the closer it is to a tax deed sale. So even though it's a smaller amount, like 249 bucks that they owe on the land behind parcel, that one, if it's not cured, is the first one to go into foreclosure because it goes back to 2024 taxes. Okay. So when you're reading these legal descriptions, that's what another thing people don't pay attention to. A lot of times, if you go to mapping and GIS, you can see the two different parcels there, and that's what would trigger you to go, "Ooh, I need to check both parcels." Because the worst thing that could happen is you own the note on this, and you didn't know that the back half of the land was all owned separately or under a different ID for the property, and that thing gets foreclosed upon, and that's gone. There goes some of your collateral value. So we want to encourage the borrower to pay. So you start to put pressure on the borrower to pay as you're watching the deadline, because many of these things allow a person time to pay it, right? And even after a lien is sold, where the county gets their money because they sold the lien, now you're paying 20%. You're paying, there's penalties, it's 20% in this particular county. So the fees go up. You still have 12 months to save your property, but now you're paying significantly more. Okay. So we can let it kind of roll out, give them some slack to go ahead and pay it. But I'm going to do everything I can to put pressure on them to pay that so I don't have to come out of pocket. That's priority number one. So letters and things like that, but also letting them know if you go back and read the security agreement that came along with the note, 99% of the time in there, it's going to say the borrower is responsible to pay the property taxes. And if they don't, you have the right to foreclose. So your additional pressure is pointing that out, educating them, right? And saying, look, we've sent you 3 letters. We still don't show that the taxes are paid. You haven't sent us a receipt. Either send us the receipt within 15 days or we are going to have to file a foreclosure action. That's putting more pressure on them to pay because I don't want to have to come out of pocket. And it works. You'll coordinate that if it's professionally serviced. You might have your servicing company. You will have your servicing company involved with you to try to encourage them to pay. Now, Dwayne, I don't know if you remember this one, but another way to do this is a lot of the county and states do have government programs now that people who are having trouble paying property taxes can apply for. And basically, if they have a pulse and they can fog a mirror, they're going to qualify for the program. And
Right. It's a
then,
hardship program.
yeah, it's a hardship program, right? And didn't we talk about a case study of that where
Yeah.
I think it was in Michigan, and
Yeah.
the borrower in Michigan was behind by a pretty significant amount. And I knew that buying the note, but I said, darn it, there's government programs. I don't want to come out of pocket for all this. I'm going to push this person. Here's the government program. Here's where you apply. And I showed that to the servicing company and said, put this in the letter. Make sure that they know this program applies. And as the date, which I'm watching, is approaching where I'm going to get to the point where I just have to pay it, I looked online. I'm like, whoa, status changed. They applied for the program. They're approved.
Yeah. And we've also dealt with the situation to where people didn't know the property tax were behind.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so there were situations didn't know it behind. The guy was like, "Hey, I didn't know. It was an honest mistake." And it was getting to that point. But being able to recognize this and pick that out as you're talking about, educating somebody in that regards to where they're like, hey, this is a good eye. This guy caught it. You never know how many other properties this person has that they may want to sell you. So it's a great connection. And it's just being able to educate others that possibly aren't seeing it or picking up on it as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I had one where I pointed it out to the note seller, and the note seller's like, oh my gosh. He
And he
said,
was in real estate. He was in real estate
yeah,
as a big investor. So, it
yeah.
happens.
And he said to me, he goes, you know what? He goes, when I redid the loan, when I modified the loan, I told them I would pay that. And he goes, I just forgot about it.
Yeah.
I'll fix it though, you
Yeah.
know? So yes, there's definitely a part of that. The government programs,
I gotta get.
once somebody enters a government program, they can't then, whoop, there goes Dwayne. They can't then, uh, the property can't be foreclosed at that point in time. So once they're under a government program, you're protected from the property going into a foreclosure for non-payment of property taxes. So that's a good thing. So look for those government programs. And again, you can search on the county website, you can search on your favorite AI, or you can do the old Google search on there. But look for those programs. They do work. They do help people out. And it's not coming out of your pocket. Okay. So, because if it does get to that point where the borrower's not responding, they're not paying, there's no government program, or they haven't applied for the government program, as that deadline approaches where the property is in danger of being foreclosed upon, you're going to just have to pay it. You have to protect the big picture, which is your collateral. Okay. So if you have to pay it, that is a collectible expense. Your servicing company might refer to that as a corporate advance, where you're advancing money for them to pay the property taxes, but you have full intent to collect that back. Now, how you collect it back gets a little more nuanced. Can you collect it on a monthly basis? Well, does the borrower have to agree to do that? Because they didn't agree to you to pay their property taxes, so why should they have to agree to pay you back on a monthly basis? That might be their argument. There's no rule that says that because you voluntarily paid their taxes. Now, again, if you go back to the contract that was signed, the security agreement, it says in there they're responsible, they can be foreclosed upon. Okay, but when it gets to this level, you just have to go, you know what? I just have to pay it to protect my interest, my lien on the property, and I'll collect it. If you can collect it on a monthly basis and your servicing company can try, great. If you can't, it gets added to the lien. Okay, it gets added to the balance of the loan. It can't accrue interest in most cases. You can check on that as well. It can't accrue penalties in most cases. You can check on that as well. Or, so if it sits there, let's say, in that account, well, you may not get paid from that until the loan pays off. And that might be 180 months from now, 120 months from now, 60 months from now. So it kind of stings a little bit because in this example, if I paid 4,600 now, that's $4,600 that's not working for me somewhere else and it's sitting there. And they don't have to pay it back off in 10 years. Wow, have I lost a lot of opportunity cost on a $5,000 where I could have put that in some kind of investment, you see? So we want to avoid having to pay, but if we have to pay to save the big picture of our investment, we do it and then we work on the collection part of that. Now, in rare circumstances, you might run your numbers and go, fine, let it foreclose. Okay. It might be that you have a non-performing note and your balance is low enough where you can say, okay, they're not paying their property taxes, and I'll just say that's 5 grand. And let's say that you have a $30,000 loan, and on that loan they haven't paid in several years, so it's got a $35,000, got a $5,000 arrearage account. So you're owed $35,000 in there, and but the house is worth $200,000, something like that. Well, then if it goes to a foreclosure sale, which might be a lot quicker for non-payment of property taxes versus you having to go through a judicial foreclosure process for non-payment of mortgage, you might run those numbers and say, well, wait a minute, this house is worth 200 grand. So in theory, somebody's going to pay about 150,000 upwards of that at a foreclosure sale. So why don't I let it go into foreclosure for non-payment of taxes? I'll just make sure that I have a representative at that foreclosure sale so they can bid it up to what's owed on the taxes plus my 35 grand. So if that comes out to $40,000 and somebody's looking to buy that property, as long as they bid over $40,000, you're getting paid off at the sale. It's higher risk. You got to be on top of your game. Advisable to have a law firm that can be there, that can represent you, make sure that you're doing everything to protect your interest. And it could work out for you better versus you taking the slow train on a judicial foreclosure for non-payment of mortgages. So those are your four curable ways of getting these things done. And what you really have to do is know the area, know what the rules are, do everything you can to not pay. But if you do have to pay, pay it. But if you run your numbers and go, you know what? I'm going to let this one go through. It's quicker, cheaper for me. And in all likelihood, I'm going to get paid out at the sale. And by the way, in that same scenario, if nobody bid over the $40,000, you would get the property. Not a bad thing either if it's worth 200,000 bucks. So you get a win-win scenario doing that. So there you have it. It is an important topic. It is something that you need to be aware of. Make it a top priority. And again, that's one of these fundamental things that you just have to know and have to apply in every deal. So hope you enjoyed that. And you want more information, how to work with me, what kind of programs that I have, just swing over to kevinshortell.com, KevinShortle, and go to the website in the upper right-hand corner. You'll see a link on there for all the various courses and programs that I have. And as Dwayne mentioned in the beginning, yes, I even do have programs where I work with you personally one-on-one, reviewing every deal, going through so you don't make mistakes such as these. So there you go, everybody. Look forward to talking to you again real soon. Bye now.